Most people think Elon Musk runs a car company, a rocket company, and an artificial intelligence company. That is the story sold in headlines, in stock tickers, in dinner table conversations across the world. But sit with that assumption for just a moment, because that is not what he is building. What if Tesla, SpaceX, XAI, Optimus, Dojo, Tesla Energy, and even Starlink are not separate businesses at all, but pieces of one single industrial machine? What if the reason nobody has connected the dots is not because the plan was hidden, but because it was scattered across so many press releases, so many earnings calls, so many quiet paragraphs in shareholder letters that almost nobody bothered to line them all up side by side? That is exactly what we are going to do tonight. We are going to lay every piece of this empire on the table in the order it was built and show you the pattern that emerges when you stop looking at Tesla as a car company and start looking at it as one layer in a much larger stack. Let us start with the piece almost nobody talks about because it is buried in a company blog post instead of a splashy keynote. Tesla's own public materials describe its mission not as making electric cars, but as bringing artificial intelligence into the physical world through vehicles, energy products, and humanoid robots. Read that sentence again. A car company describing itself in its own words as an artificial intelligence deployment platform. That is the golden fact hiding in plain sight, and it changes everything about how you should be watching this story unfold. Here is why that single sentence matters so much. For the better part of 2 decades, the entire technology industry has been obsessed with software intelligence. Chatbots, language models, algorithms that can write, reason, and predict. But intelligence trapped inside a data center cannot build a house, cannot drive you home, cannot lift a box off a factory floor. The bottleneck was never really about how smart the software could get. The bottleneck was always about how you get that intelligence into a body that can move through the physical world. And that, more than rockets or robo-taxis, appears to be the actual project underneath everything Musk has built. Think about the pieces individually for a second, the way most casual observers do. Tesla makes cars. SpaceX launches rockets and operates a satellite internet service called Starlink. XAI builds a chatbot to compete with the giants of Silicon Valley. Optimus is a humanoid robot project that still looks, to a lot of skeptics, like a novelty. Dojo is some kind of supercomputer nobody outside of engineering circles can really explain. On the surface, 4 or 5 unrelated bets from a restless billionaire chasing headlines. That is the story most people believe, and it is the story that keeps people from seeing the machine underneath. Now flip the lens. Energy powers artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence controls robots. Robots transform factories. Factories build the machines that make more machines. And those machines produce even more infrastructure, which needs even more energy, which starts the loop over again at a bigger scale. Suddenly, Tesla Energy is not a side project selling home batteries to environmentally conscious homeowners. It is the power source for a system that needs enormous, reliable, controllable electricity to run compute clusters and robotic factories around the clock. Suddenly, Optimus is not a quirky robot doing a slow dance on a stage. It is the embodiment layer, the thing that lets artificial intelligence actually move boxes, tighten bolts, and walk through a warehouse. Suddenly, Dojo and Tesla's custom artificial intelligence chips are not just internal tools to train self-driving software. They are the compute backbone for an entire industrial operating system. This is where the second act of the story gets uncomfortable, because now we have to talk about scale. And scale is where most viewers lose the thread, so let us make it human. When Tesla says it plans to invest more than $25 billion in 1 year alone, with artificial intelligence, new products, and manufacturing expansion listed among the primary uses of that capital, it is difficult for most of us to feel the size of that number. So picture it differently. $25 billion is roughly the cost of buying every home in a mid-sized American city, all at once, in cash. That is not a marketing budget. That is not research and development pocket change. That is nation-state level industrial investment coming from a single company in a single year, and it is being poured directly into the machinery that connects energy, compute, and robotics. Now picture the factories themselves. Tesla's gigafactories are not described casually as large buildings. They are frequently compared by engineers who have walked their floors to something closer to 50 football fields laid end to end under one roof. Inside that kind of space, the goal was never simply to assemble cars faster than a legacy automaker. The stated goal, repeated across Tesla's own materials, materials was to build the machine that builds the machine. In plain language, that means the real product was never the car rolling off the line. The real product was the factory itself, engineered as a self-improving system that could, in theory, be pointed at almost any physical product and mass-produce it with the same relentless efficiency. Once you see that, the rest of the empire starts rearranging itself in your mind. SpaceX is no longer just a rocket company chasing the romantic dream of Mars. It becomes the logistics and communications layer of the same stack, launching Starlink satellites that can beam connectivity into remote factories, into disaster zones, into places where fiber optic cable will never reach, and eventually, if the ambitions are taken at face value, into other worlds where an industrial base might one day need to be built from scratch. xAI stops looking like a company scrambling to catch up to a 2-year head start from the biggest names in artificial intelligence, and starts looking like the intelligence layer that eventually gets licensed into every vehicle, every robot, every factory system across the entire ecosystem. Even Neuralink, the brain-computer interface project that headlines love to sensationalize, fits neatly into this picture as the human interface layer. The point where a person might one day connect directly into a network of machines built by every other company in the stack. Here is where we have to be honest with you, because a documentary that only tells you the exciting version is not doing its job. Is this a hidden conspiracy? No. And we want to be very direct about that, because that word gets thrown around recklessly online, and it does not hold up to scrutiny. Tesla's own leadership has published this connective language directly in its master plan documents, publicly available for anyone to read. The company has stated, in writing, that it is building products and services that bring artificial intelligence into the physical world through vehicles, energy products, and humanoid robots. Tesla's own artificial intelligence page describes deploying autonomy at scale in vehicles, in robots, and beyond. None of that was smuggled out in a leaked memo. It was published in full view for anyone patient enough to read past the press release headline. So if it was published, why does almost nobody talk about it this way? That is the real mystery here, and it has nothing to do with secrecy. It has everything to do with fragmentation. Wall Street analysts cover Tesla as an automotive stock. Space journalists cover SpaceX as a launch and satellite story. Technology reporters cover xAI as just another entrant in the artificial intelligence race. Each beat reporter, each specialist analyst, each casual observer sees one slice of the picture, filtered through their own narrow lens, and almost nobody is paid to step back and connect 5 different industries into a single thesis. The strategy is not hidden because Tesla kept it secret. It is hidden because almost nobody connected all the pieces. Let us be fair and separate what we actually know from what remains reasonable speculation, because that distinction matters more than ever in an era of manufactured outrage and clickbait certainty. It is a verified fact that Tesla's own published materials link electric vehicles, energy products, and humanoid robots under the banner of bringing artificial intelligence into the physical world. It is a company statement, not independently audited fact, that Tesla is pursuing what it calls sustainable abundance and a global energy economy. It reflects broad industry consensus that manufacturing, energy, computing power, and robotics are becoming the central bottlenecks of the next technological era, a view shared by voices well outside of Tesla entirely. It is expert opinion, offered by analysts who study industrial strategy, that Musk's collection of businesses forms an unusually coherent stack compared to typical diversified conglomerates. It is a reasonable projection, not a certainty, that robo-taxis, Optimus units, and custom artificial intelligence chips will increasingly reinforce and depend on one another as the decade continues. And it remains pure speculation, unsupported by verified evidence, to claim there is a single secret master plan designed specifically to control the next industrial revolution. We are not going to pretend that speculation is fact just because it makes for a punchier headline. But even stripped of conspiracy, the honest version of this story is still staggering, and honestly more interesting than the conspiracy theory ever was. Compare Musk's approach to the biggest names in technology and industry, because context makes the scale of this ambition much clearer. A leading chip designer builds extraordinary processors, but generally leaves the robots, the factories, and the energy grid to somebody else entirely. The largest cloud computing giants build software empires that live almost entirely inside data centers, rarely touching a factory floor or a power plant. Even other robotics companies, other electric vehicle manufacturers, other battery producers tend to specialize in one narrow layer of this stack and partner out the rest. What appears different about Musk's approach is the attempt to own several layers simultaneously: energy generation, battery storage, artificial intelligence compute, humanoid robotics, vehicle manufacturing, satellite communication, and launch capability, all under companies where he holds direct operational control. That is the part worth sitting with as we head toward tonight's biggest question, the one we genuinely want you to argue about in the comments below. If this industrial stack actually works as designed, if energy really does flow into compute, compute really does control robots, and robots really do transform factories into self-improving machines, does it even matter anymore whether we call this a car company, a robotics company, or an artificial intelligence company? Or have we reached a point where those old category labels simply stop making sense, where the only accurate description left is something closer to an industrial operating system, a foundational layer meant to sit underneath dozens of future industries, the same way electricity or the internet sits underneath everything we do today? We want to know what you think, because reasonable people watching the same evidence are landing in very different places. And that disagreement is exactly what makes this story worth following closely. So where does that leave the answer to tonight's original question, the one that got you clicking on this video in the first place? The real product Elon Musk may be building is not a car. It is not a robot standing on a stage doing a slow, careful wave. It is not even an artificial intelligence model trying to out-argue its rivals in a benchmark test. Based on the verified evidence, the company's statements, and the pattern connecting energy, compute, robotics, manufacturing, and communication, the thing actually being assembled looks much closer to an industrial operating system, a foundational layer that could end up powering the next major technological era the way that oil, steel, and electricity powered the last one. Whether that makes Musk a visionary industrialist, an overreaching gambler, or something history has not quite found the right word for yet, is genuinely still an open question, and it is one worth asking with clear eyes rather than easy conspiracy language. What is not in question is that the automotive and technology landscape most of us grew up believing in is quietly being rebuilt from the ground up, layer by layer, factory by factory, and most of the industry has not fully caught up to what that means yet. And that is exactly why this channel exists. The vehicles sitting in driveways today, the batteries powering homes, the robots that may soon share a warehouse floor with human workers. All of it is moving faster than most headlines can keep up with. So if you do not want to be caught off guard by what comes next in this industry, join us here at Driven to Distraction, because the next chapter of this story is already being written, and we intend to be there to break it down piece by piece right alongside you.